I need you to hear something that might validate what you've been feeling in your bones but haven't quite been able to name. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes with loving someone whose heart is entirely with you, but whose life still has someone else in it who won't accept that reality. And if you're here, you already know what I'm talking about. You're not imagining this. You're not being dramatic. You're not insecure or jealous or any of the other words people use to dismiss what you're experiencing. What you're living through right now is one of the most emotionally complex situations a human heart can navigate. Because here's what's actually happening, emotionally, spiritually, in every way that matters in the invisible realm where real connection lives, he's already yours. His heart has made its choice. His soul knows where home is. When he closes his eyes, you're the face he sees. When he imagines his future, you're the one standing next to him. When he thinks about love, real love, the kind that changes everything, he thinks about you. But there's another woman in the picture who is absolutely refusing to accept what's already happened in the spiritual and emotional realm. She's holding on with everything she has. She's not stepping back gracefully. She's not acknowledging what's true. She's fighting a battle that's already been lost, but she's fighting it loudly, persistently, with every tool at her disposal. And you're caught in this impossible middle space. You have his heart, but you don't have peace. You have his emotional devotion, but you don't have clarity. You have his genuine love, but you don't have the clean, uncomplicated relationship you deserve. Instead, you're watching him navigate something that drains both of you. You're seeing him try to handle a situation with kindness while someone else interprets that kindness as hope. You're witnessing him set boundaries that get ignored, disrespected, crossed over and over again. And the hardest part? You can't even be fully angry because part of you understands that she's losing something real. Part of you recognizes that she's in pain too. But understanding her pain doesn't make your situation any less exhausting. If this resonates with where you are right now, I want you to leave one word in the comments: clarity. Just that one word. Because what you need most isn't more love from him, you already have that. What you need is clarity about what comes next. I'm creating this content because I believe these conversations matter, and if you've been blessed by what we're building here, the super thanks button below this video is one way to help me continue dedicating time to these deep explorations of the heart. Even a small gesture makes a massive difference. Now, let's talk about what's really going on beneath the surface of this situation. Because there are layers here that need to be understood. Stay with me, because what's coming will help you make sense of what's been feeling so confusing. We're going to walk through this together. Let me paint a picture of what your days actually look like right now. You wake up, and for a brief moment before you fully remember your situation, there's peace. Then reality floods back in. You reach for your phone, and there's a message from him, something sweet, something that reminds you why you love him. But underneath the sweetness, you can sometimes sense the weight he's carrying. You can feel the tension of what he's managing on the other side of his life. Maybe you see social media posts that make your stomach tighten. Maybe you hear about interactions that technically shouldn't bother you, but they do because you know what they mean. Maybe you have conversations with him where you can hear the exhaustion in his voice as he explains, once again, that he's handled something, set a boundary, made things clear. But then why does this keep happening? If he's made things clear, why is she still acting like she has a claim? If his heart is with you, why does it feel like you're still having to share space with someone who should have exited the picture by now? Here's what you need to understand about what's actually unfolding. When a man's heart has genuinely moved from one woman to another, there's an energetic shift that happens. It's not subtle. It's profound. The woman who's being left behind can feel it, even if nothing has been said out loud yet. She can sense that something fundamental has changed. And that sensing creates panic. Because on some level, she knows. She knows that when he's quiet, he's thinking about you. She knows that when he's distant, he's emotionally somewhere else. She knows that something has shifted in him that she can't shift back. And that knowledge, that terrible knowing, often triggers the exact opposite response of what you'd hoped for. Instead of stepping back with dignity, she doubles down. Instead of releasing gracefully, she tightens her grip. Instead of accepting reality, she fights harder against it. This isn't necessarily because she's a bad person. This is often because she's terrified. She's watching something slip away, and her survival instincts have kicked in. Fight or flight. And she's chosen fight. So she finds reasons to text. She creates situations that require his attention. She manufactures crises that need his involvement. She refuses to accept boundaries because accepting them would mean accepting that it's over. And she's not ready to accept that. Meanwhile, you're watching the man you love try to navigate this with kindness. Because here's something crucial about the kind of man whose heart is genuinely with you: he's usually not cruel. He doesn't want to hurt people unnecessarily. He's trying to handle a complicated situation without being a monster. And sometimes, that kindness gets misread as mixed signals. His attempt to be decent gets interpreted as romantic interest. His effort to be respectful gets twisted into hope. You see this happening, and it creates a specific kind of frustration. Because you're not asking him to be mean. You're not demanding that he be heartless. But you are exhausted by watching someone else refuse to accept what's already been decided. You're tired of feeling like the other woman in a situation where you're actually the chosen woman. You're drained by having to be patient with a process that feels like it should have been resolved by now. In quiet moments alone, you find yourself questioning things you shouldn't have to question. Is his love for me real, or am I convincing myself of something that's more complicated than I want to admit? If I were truly the one, wouldn't this be simpler? Does the fact that she's still around mean something I'm not seeing? Your mind goes to places that hurt. You imagine scenarios where maybe you've misread everything. You wonder if you're the placeholder while he figures out what he really wants. You question whether emotional commitment without full life commitment actually means anything at all. And then he does something that reminds you of the truth. He shows up for you in a way that's undeniable. He says something so specific to who you are that you remember: this isn't confusion, this is love. He makes a choice that proves where his heart actually lives. And you settle back into knowing. But the cycle is exhausting. This back and forth between certainty and doubt. This constant navigation of a situation that shouldn't still be this complicated. If you're feeling emotionally exhausted by this whole dynamic, type the word tired in the comments. Just so you know you're not alone in how draining this actually is. Because it is draining. Even when love is real, even when his choice is clear, the situation itself extracts an emotional cost. And you're allowed to acknowledge that cost. You're allowed to name how hard this is. Now, let's go deeper into what's happening beneath what you can see. There are 3 simultaneous realities occurring in your situation, and understanding each one will help you navigate what's coming. The first reality is his internal world. The second reality is her internal world. The third reality is the spiritual truth beneath both. Let's start with what's happening inside him. On the surface, you might see hesitation. You might see him taking longer than you'd like to completely sever ties. You might see him being more patient with her disruptions than you think the situation warrants. And this can create doubt in you. But here's what's often true beneath that surface behavior: he's not hesitating because he's confused about his feelings. He's hesitating because he's trying to do something that's actually quite difficult, end one chapter of his life without being unnecessarily cruel about it. Especially if there's history there. Especially if there were real feelings at one point, even if they've transformed into something else now. Especially if there are complicating factors: shared friends, shared spaces, shared responsibilities. He's trying to untangle a situation with care. And sometimes, that care looks like weakness from the outside when it's actually integrity. Now, I need to be clear about something important. There's a difference between a man who's being honorable in a complicated situation and a man who's keeping his options open. A man who's emotionally yours but navigating a complex exit will still make you feel chosen. He'll still prioritize your emotional security even while he's handling something difficult. He'll still communicate with you about what's happening. He'll still make decisions that prove you're not an option, you're the choice. But a man who's actually keeping his options open will make you feel uncertain. He'll use the complications as an excuse for indefinite inaction. He'll keep you in a perpetual state of waiting without clear movement forward. You need to be honest with yourself about which one you're experiencing. Because this message is for the woman who's with a man who's genuinely chosen her, but is dealing with someone else who won't accept that choice. This message isn't for the woman who's convincing herself she's chosen when the evidence keeps contradicting that belief. You know in your soul which category you're in. Your intuition has already told you the truth. So let's continue with the assumption that his heart is genuinely, completely yours. What's happening in his internal world right now is a form of grief mixed with guilt mixed with frustration. Grief because ending any significant relationship, even one that's no longer right, involves loss. Guilt because he knows his choice is causing someone pain, and if he's a decent human, that pain affects him even when he knows his choice is right. Frustration because no matter how clearly he communicates, no matter how firm his boundaries, she's not receiving the message he's sending. He's living in the tension between honoring his truth and managing someone else's refusal to accept that truth. And that tension is exhausting for him too. You're not the only one tired. He's tired in a different way. Now let's talk about her internal world, because understanding this will give you compassion without making you responsible for managing her emotions. What's happening inside her is a war between what she knows intellectually and what she can't accept emotionally. Intellectually, on some level, she knows it's over. She can feel the energetic shift. She can sense his emotional absence even when he's physically present. She's noticed the changes in how he talks, how he looks at his phone, how he seems to be living half in a world she's not part of anymore. But emotionally, she cannot accept this reality. Because accepting it would mean facing a pain she's not ready to face. It would mean grieving a future she'd already built in her mind. It would mean acknowledging that she wasn't enough to keep his heart, and that particular wound cuts deep into anyone's sense of self. So instead of accepting, she fights. She creates reasons for contact. She manufactures emergencies. She finds excuses to remain relevant. She interprets any kindness as romantic possibility. She holds on to breadcrumbs like they're full meals. She convinces herself that if she just tries hard enough, loves enough, proves enough, he'll remember why he chose her in the first place. Except he didn't forget. He simply changed. He met you, and something shifted in him that can't be shifted back. And no amount of her effort can undo that shift. This is where compassion becomes important, but not at the cost of your peace. You can understand that she's in pain without making yourself responsible for managing that pain. You can recognize that she's struggling without allowing that struggle to dictate the terms of your relationship. You can have empathy for her position without sacrificing your own emotional well-being to accommodate her refusal to accept reality. Her grief is real, but it's not your burden to carry. Her pain is valid, but it's not your responsibility to solve. Her difficulty letting go is understandable, but it's not your job to make easier by stepping back from what's rightfully yours. This is a crucial boundary to hold. Because here's what sometimes happens, women with compassionate hearts start to feel guilty for being loved. They start to feel like they're the cause of someone else's pain. They start to shrink themselves, hide their joy, downplay their connection, all to avoid making someone else feel bad. Don't do that. Don't make yourself small because someone else is struggling with your blessing. Your love story is not an apology you owe to someone else's disappointment. Now, let's talk about the third reality, the spiritual truth beneath both of their experiences. There's something happening in the invisible realm that's more powerful than either of their individual struggles. There's a divine orchestration at work. A rearranging of relationships. A clearing away of what's no longer aligned. A making space for what's meant to be. And when divine timing is moving something, human resistance can slow it down, but it cannot stop it. She can refuse to step back, but she cannot stop what's already been decided in the spiritual realm. She can fight against the tide, but the tide is still moving. She can hold on with all her strength, but she's holding on to something that's already released her. This doesn't mean the process won't be messy. It doesn't mean there won't be frustrating delays. It doesn't mean you won't have moments of wanting to scream at the slowness of it all. But it does mean that the outcome is already settled. What's yours is already yours. The emotional bond is already established. The spiritual connection is already real. The love is already chosen. What you're waiting for now is the physical reality to catch up with the spiritual truth. And that gap, between what's true in the invisible realm and what's manifested in the visible realm, is where you're living right now. It's uncomfortable. It requires faith. It demands patience you didn't know you'd need. But it's also temporary. If you felt in your spirit that this situation is going to resolve, that you're not crazy for believing in this love, that what's meant for you cannot be blocked by someone else's resistance, type yes in the comments. Let that be your declaration of faith. This next part is going to shift how you see everything that's been happening. Stay right here with me. What I'm about to share might challenge you, but it's going to set you free. The woman who's refusing to step back isn't your enemy. She's your teacher. Not because you should thank her for the chaos. Not because you should be grateful for the complication. But because her presence in this situation is revealing things you need to see about yourself, about him, and about the nature of real love. Let me explain what I mean. Her refusal to step back is showing you the strength of what you have with him. Think about it. She's using every tool she has: history, familiarity, guilt, manufactured crises, emotional manipulation, appeals to his kindness. She's pulling out everything. And despite all of that, his heart remains with you. That tells you something profound about the quality of your connection. If what you had with him was superficial attraction, it would have crumbled under this pressure. If your bond was just physical chemistry, the complications would have sent him running back to what's easier. If your love was surface level, he would have chosen simplicity over depth. But he hasn't. Despite the mess, despite the difficulty, despite having an easier option right there refusing to leave, he continues choosing you. That's not small. That's actually enormous. Her presence is also revealing his character in ways you wouldn't see otherwise. You're watching how he handles conflict. You're seeing how he sets boundaries under pressure. You're observing how he treats someone he's no longer in love with but once cared for. You're witnessing his integrity in real time. And yes, sometimes you wish he'd handle it faster, firmer, with less patience for her disruptions. But you're also seeing that he's not cruel. He's not a man who discards people heartlessly. He's not someone who can turn love off like a switch and treat people like they're disposable. Which means when he loves you, that love comes from a man of substance. A man who understands that hearts are sacred, even when relationships end. A man who knows that how you leave someone says something about your soul. You're also learning about your own strength through this situation. Because navigating this requires a level of emotional maturity that not everyone has. It requires you to hold on to truth when circumstances are messy. It requires you to trust what you know in your spirit even when the external situation doesn't reflect that knowing yet. It requires you to stay grounded in your worth when someone else's behavior could make you question it. You're learning to love without fear. To commit without controlling. To trust without needing to manage every detail. To believe in someone's choice even when that choice is being tested by external pressure. These are not easy lessons. But they're transforming you into a woman who can hold powerful love without crumbling under its complexity. Now, here's the part that might be hard to hear but is absolutely essential. The length of time this is taking isn't just about her refusal to let go. It's also about divine timing preparing both of you for what's coming. Because when this finally resolves, and it will resolve, you're not just getting a relationship. You're getting a partnership that's been tested and proven. You're stepping into a love that survived something most relationships never face. You're claiming a connection that's already been through fire. That kind of love is rare. That kind of bond is unshakable. But it's being forged right now, in this difficult season. Every day that you choose to trust him despite the complications, you're building trust muscles you'll need for the future. Every moment that you hold your worth without needing external validation, you're establishing a foundation of self-love that will make your relationship healthier. Every time you extend grace for the messiness while still honoring your boundaries, you're learning the balance that makes mature love possible. This season is not wasted. It's not just an annoying delay before your real life starts. This season is the preparation for what you've been praying for. And here's something else that's true: her refusal to step back is actually accelerating his clarity. Every time she crosses a boundary he set, he sees more clearly why the relationship needed to end. Every time she manufactures drama, he's reminded why he chose the peace he feels with you. Every time she refuses to respect his words, he values more deeply how you honor his voice. She's actually making the case for your relationship stronger with every desperate attempt to hold on. She doesn't realize it, but her behavior is pushing him toward you more firmly. Not because he's running from her, but because the contrast is becoming undeniable. The difference between forced connection and natural flow. Between having to convince someone to respect you and being with someone who respects you inherently. Between exhausting love and restful love. You represent rest to him. You represent home. You represent the kind of love that doesn't require constant navigation of drama. And every day this situation continues, that truth becomes more apparent. There's also a spiritual principle at work here that you need to understand. What's meant for you cannot be taken from you. Not by someone else's refusal to accept reality. Not by delays in timing. Not by complications in the transition. If this man is your divine assignment, if this love is part of your ordained path, then no amount of human interference can stop what God has already arranged. Her refusal to step back might slow the process, but it cannot stop the outcome. She might create bumps in the road, but she cannot change the destination. She might make the journey more complicated, but she cannot block your arrival. This is where faith becomes your anchor. Not blind faith that ignores red flags. Not naive faith that refuses to see reality. But grounded faith that knows the difference between a delay and a denial. A delay says, not yet, but yes. A denial says, this isn't your path. You know in your spirit which one you're experiencing. You know whether you're being asked to wait for something real or to wake up from something false. And if you're being asked to wait, then trust that the wait has purpose. If the super thanks button is calling to you right now because this message is touching something deep in your spirit, I'm so grateful for your support. It allows me to continue creating these intimate conversations about the real, complicated, beautiful experiences of the heart. Let me tell you what's coming next in your situation. Because there's a shift happening that you might not see yet, but it's building. Don't go anywhere. So what do you actually do while you're in this season? How do you navigate the gap between what's true emotionally and what's resolved practically? How do you love someone fully while someone else refuses to release them completely? I'm going to give you specific guidance, and I need you to hear every word. First, stop competing. This is not a competition, even though it sometimes feels like one. You're not in a race to prove you're better, more lovable, more worthy. You've already won his heart. The battle is over. What you're witnessing now is just the administrative aftermath of a war that's already been decided. When you operate from a competitive mindset, you diminish yourself. You start performing, proving, trying to be enough. But you're already enough. His heart has already chosen. You don't need to convince him of what he already knows. So stop monitoring her social media looking for signs. Stop comparing yourself to her. Stop trying to be the opposite of whatever she is. Just be yourself. The self he fell in love with. The woman whose essence called to something in his soul. That woman doesn't need to compete. She just needs to exist in her truth. Second, Maintain your boundaries without apology. You're allowed to have limits on what you'll tolerate. You're allowed to say, I need you to handle this situation more actively. You're allowed to express when something crosses a line for you. You're allowed to require progress, not just promises. Loving him doesn't mean accepting indefinite chaos. Being patient doesn't mean being passive. Having compassion for the complexity doesn't mean sacrificing your peace forever. Your boundaries are not ultimatums if they come from a place of self-respect rather than control. There's a difference between saying, fix this immediately or I'm gone, and saying, I need to see that we're moving toward resolution because my heart deserves that. One is an ultimatum. The other is a boundary. Know the difference. And hold your boundaries with love but without wavering. Third, build your life independent of this situation's timeline. Don't put your entire existence on hold waiting for this to resolve. Don't stop pursuing your dreams because you're in a complicated season. Don't neglect your friendships, your growth, your joy, your purpose. Your life is happening right now. Not when this situation finally clears up. Right now. And if you spend this entire season in suspended animation waiting for him to fully untangle his past, you'll look back with regret. Live your life. Fully. Presently. Let him know that you're building something beautiful whether he's figuring his situation out or not. This isn't about making him jealous. This is about honoring yourself. This is about remembering that you're a whole person with a whole life, not just someone's girlfriend in waiting. Fourth, communicate clearly without attacking. You're allowed to talk about how this situation affects you. You're allowed to express frustration, exhaustion, confusion. You're allowed to ask questions and expect honest answers. But there's a way to do this that invites connection rather than creating defensiveness. Instead of, why is she still in your life? You obviously don't have strong enough boundaries. Try, I'm struggling with how long this transition is taking, and I need to understand what's making it complicated so I can support us both through this. Instead of, if you really loved me, this would be over by now. Try, I know you love me, and I'm trying to be patient, but I need to know that we're actively moving toward a resolution. See the difference? One attacks his character and creates shame. The other names your experience and invites partnership. You can be honest about your struggle without making him the villain. Fifth, discern the difference between patience and foolishness. Patience is choosing to trust the process while seeing evidence of progress. Foolishness is ignoring red flags because you don't want to face what they mean. Patience says, this is hard, but we're moving forward together. Foolishness says, I'll just ignore my growing concerns and hope they resolve themselves. Patience honors your intuition while giving space for complexity. Foolishness dismisses your intuition because facing it would require difficult decisions. You need to be ruthlessly honest with yourself about which one you're practicing. Are you seeing actual progress, even if it's slower than you'd like? Or are you seeing the same patterns on repeat with different excuses? Is he actively working to resolve this situation? Or is he comfortable with the status quo as long as you're not making it uncomfortable? Does he prioritize your emotional security even while dealing with complications? Or does he minimize your concerns whenever you bring them up? These questions matter. Your answers matter. Don't lie to yourself about what you're actually experiencing just because you're invested in a particular outcome. Sixth, pray for her. I know. That's probably the last thing you want to do. But here's why it matters. When you pray for someone, you release them from the role of villain in your story. You stop giving them power over your peace. You hand the situation to something bigger than both of you. You don't pray for her to disappear. You don't pray for her to suffer. You pray for her healing. For her clarity. For her to find her own path forward. For her to release what's no longer hers to hold. This isn't about being a saint. This is about protecting your own spirit from bitterness. Because bitterness will poison your relationship even after she's gone. Resentment will follow you into your future if you don't release it now. And the fastest way to release it is to genuinely wish her well. 7th, anchor yourself in spiritual truth daily. Every morning, before you check your phone, remind yourself of what's true. What's true is that you are loved. What's true is that his heart has chosen you. What's true is that complications don't negate connection. What's true is that delays are not denials. What's true is that what's meant for you cannot be blocked by human interference. What's true is that you're strong enough to navigate this season. What's true is that this situation is temporary. What's true is that your worth is not determined by how quickly someone else accepts reality. Speak these truths over yourself before the chaos of the day begins. Let them be your foundation. Let them steady you when everything else feels uncertain. If you're committing to walk through this season with grace and strength, drop the word committed in the comments. Let that be your declaration. Now, let me tell you what's about to happen. Because there's a breaking point coming, and you need to be ready for it. There's a moment coming that you can't see yet, but it's building. A moment where everything shifts. Where the tension that's been stretched so tight finally snaps. Where clarity cuts through confusion like light through darkness. It might happen suddenly. One day she'll do something that finally crosses the line he can't uncross. One day he'll wake up and realize that his kindness is enabling her delusion. One day the contrast between the chaos she brings and the peace you offer will become so stark he can't unsee it. Or it might happen gradually. A slow dawning. A progressive realization. A gentle but firm closing of a door that's been left open too long. However it happens, it's coming. Because this situation cannot sustain itself indefinitely. Something has to give. And what's going to give is her grip on something that was never hers to hold in the first place. When that moment comes, you need to be ready. Not ready to say, "I told you so." Not ready to punish him for how long it took. Not ready to make him pay for your patience. But ready to step fully into what you've been waiting for. Ready to love without the shadow of someone else's presence. Ready to build without the weight of unresolved complications. Ready to receive the relationship you've been believing in. Because here's what I know about you, even though we've never met. You didn't come this far to walk away right before the breakthrough. You didn't develop this much strength just to give up when resolution is on the horizon. You didn't hold your worth through this entire season just to abandon yourself now. You're stronger than you think. You're more patient than you knew you could be. You're more grounded than the chaos around you. And you're loved more deeply than someone else's refusal to accept it can diminish. His heart is yours. Not partially. Not conditionally. Not once this situation resolves. Right now, in this moment, his heart is yours. The external situation is just catching up to the internal reality. And yes, the gap between those two things is uncomfortable. Yes, the waiting is hard. Yes, you're tired of complications. But you're also on the other side of so much already. You've already survived the hardest part, falling in love with someone whose situation was messy. You've already done the brave thing, choosing him anyway. You've already proven your strength, staying grounded through uncertainty. What's coming next is the part where everything you've invested pays off. Where the faith you've held becomes sight. Where the promise becomes reality. And when you look back on this season, you won't remember it as wasted time. You'll remember it as the refining fire that prepared you both for the kind of love most people only dream about. You'll tell your story one day, and this part, this messy, complicated, frustrating part, will be the evidence of how real your love is. You'll say, "We went through something that would have broken most relationships before they even started, and we came out stronger." You'll say, "There was a woman who refused to step back, and instead of destroying us, her presence revealed how unshakable we are." You'll say, "I learned to love with open hands instead of clenched fists, and that changed everything." This season is writing a story that will mean something. Not just to you, but to everyone who witnesses the kind of love that survives what shouldn't be survivable. So hold on. Not with white knuckles and desperation, but with open palms and confident faith. Hold on to what you know is true even when what you see is complicated. Hold on to your worth even when someone else's behavior could make you question it. Hold on to love even when love is requiring more patience than you thought you had. Because on the other side of this season is a relationship that's already been tested. A love that's already been proven. A bond that's already survived fire. And that, beautiful soul, is worth every difficult day you're walking through right now. He's emotionally yours. Completely. Entirely. Without reservation. And no one else's refusal to accept that changes what's true. You're not waiting for him to choose you. He already has. You're just waiting for the physical reality to align with the spiritual truth. And that alignment is coming. Sooner than you think. Stronger than you imagine. Sweeter than you've hoped. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust what you know in your spirit. And most of all, trust yourself. You've got this. You've always had this. And the love you're believing in is absolutely, undeniably real. If this message met you exactly where you are, if it spoke to something you've been unable to put into words, if it gave you strength to keep going, the super thanks button is one way to say that this content matters to you. Your support, in whatever form it takes, means everything. And if you needed to hear every single word of this today, type received in the comments. Let that be your acknowledgement that this word was for you. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be loved the way you deserve. And it's going to be worth every moment you waited. I believe in your love story. Keep believing too.